Videos coming out of Afghanistan showing the Taliban parading in military vehicles left behind by Afghan forces. The equipment originally came from the U.S. and NATO. And what about those reports about service dogs being left behind? Over 1 million without power after Hurricane Ida rolled through Louisiana. Despite being downgraded to a tropical depression, Ida still leaving a wake of destruction behind, hampering rescue efforts. And in Texas, one of the strictest abortion laws in the country is now taking effect. That's after the Supreme Court declined to block it. Also in the Lone Star State, an election reform bill is headed to Governor Greg Abbott's desk. That's despite 52 Democrat lawmakers fleeing the state in July in attempts to stop it. Tune in to Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. Let's begin with scenes coming out of Afghanistan. Videos posted on social media show the Taliban parading hardware left behind by Afghan and U.S. forces. This after the last of the American troops left Afghanistan earlier this week. And Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on the costs of the longest war.
We remember 2,461 American service members and personnel who paid the ultimate price in this war. And more than 20,000 wounded Americans, some still carrying the scars that you can't see on the outside. But right now, it's time to thank all those who served in this war, because you are the greatest asset that we have. You.
There's been debate around how the U.S. conducted the Afghanistan withdrawal, and now the Pope also weighing in. In an interview broadcasted today, Pope Francis said the chaotic withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan was due in part to a lack of foreseeing all possibilities. He also said the Vatican is currently using its diplomatic powers to discourage the new Taliban regime from waging reprisals against Afghans opposing its rule. Now, let's turn to the viral photos of dogs in crates left in Kabul. The Pentagon is pushing back. That's after No Paws Left Behind trended on Twitter, and images showing what looked like service dogs left in cages in Kabul airport made the rounds. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby tweeted out, to correct erroneous reports, the U.S. military did not leave any dogs in cages at Hamid Karzai International Airport, including the reported military working dogs. Photos circulating online were animals under the care of the Kabul Small Animal Rescue, not dogs under our care. Kabul Small Animal Rescue, or KSAR, has been working to get animals out of the country. Among them are contract dogs who appear in the now viral images. The group tweeted out on August 27th, saying it was trying to evacuate the animals on cargo space on the planes leaving the country. It's part of the crowd-funded initiative Operation Hercules. An older social media post from the group described the animals as dogs and cats left behind as people flee in Kabul. The earlier post made no mention about the animals being service animals or contracted to work with the U.S. military. KSAR said they raised sufficient funds to get the animals out, but that no plane ever touched down at the airport. The group is an affiliate of SPCA International. SPCA International then published an update stating that Charlotte Maxwell Jones, the KSAR's founder, had rescued at least 130 animals and had been working with U.S. forces to evacuate them from the country. The group said that number included, quote, 46 working dogs and several personal pets belonging to fleeing Americans. And that's not all. The president and chief executive officer of animal welfare group American Humane also weighed in. In his open letter, he criticized the move, saying, I am devastated by reports that the American government is pulling out of Kabul and leaving behind brave U.S. military contract working dogs to be tortured and killed at the hand of our enemies. These brave dogs do the same dangerous, life-saving work as our military working dogs and deserved a far better fate than the one to which they have been condemned. The CEO telling KUSI she hopes to change legislation so that this never happens again. And it's not just the Pentagon pushing back. The Defense Department is also stressing no military service dogs were left behind. A spokesman saying all military dogs in the country left Afghanistan with their handlers. A spokesman telling Military Times that while human life was the priority, getting the working dogs home was also a top priority. He added, we invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into these dogs. We would not leave them behind. The dogs in the viral pictures are contract dogs. Now, since these are contract dogs, the ultimate fate of the dogs still remains unknown. According to SPCA International, the dogs weren't able to board military aircraft, and the several private charter aircraft the group had secured to get the dogs out were turned away from the airport. It adds that as the airport was evacuated, the dogs were turned loose. They are now reportedly roaming around the airport as strays. Now, speaking of pets, American Humane is also working to help animals back in the U.S. affected by Hurricane Ida. Hurricane Ida has been downgraded to a tropical depression. Around 1 million people in Louisiana still without power. In some of the hardest hit areas, this may continue for weeks to come. And some regions also have to deal with water shortages. And now cleanup efforts are being hampered by power outages and supply chain disruptions, and officials are telling evacuees to stay away. Many roads impassable or blocked by debris. The full extent of damage is yet to be seen. An AT&T worker from New York says he's never seen anything like it.
Oh, it's a lot of crazy stuff out there. Like boats on roads, houses on roads, everything just knocked over, the whole nine.
Floodwaters still surrounding homes in Grand Isle, where it could take years to rebuild. From widespread damages to other dangers in southern Louisiana and Mississippi, millions are without power. And tap water and gasoline are also in short supply, much of the region under heat advisory Wednesday. That could cause dangerous conditions for people without power who can't run air conditioners. Aside from footage of flooded towns, there's also one showing a cow stuck in a tree. Despite the floods, some regions are dealing with water shortages. Over 1 million residents in Louisiana bracing for excessive heat with no AC. Officials issued a heat advisory for the New Orleans region, and it could feel like over 100 degrees in the coming days. Some 25,000 utility workers are on the ground, but it could take weeks before power is restored. And in some of the hardest hit areas like Jefferson Parish, residents also face a water problem. About 440,000 people had no water service, and an additional 320,000 people were under boil water advisories. Jefferson Parish estimates it could take at least 5 days to restore the water system. State officials have this message for residents who have already evacuated. At least 4 people have died as a result of the hurricane. Part of a highway in Mississippi collapsed and formed a 20-foot deep hole on the ground. 2 people died and 10 were injured when 7 vehicles plunged into this hole Monday night. And a 71-year-old man got attacked by an alligator in the floodwaters in a New Orleans suburb. He is now missing. More than 5,000 National Guard members are working on disaster response, and other states are expected to send more in the coming days. Residents are forming long lines at gas stations, waiting to get fuel for their cars and generators.
Over 2 hours for sure.
How long have you been in line?
About 2.5 hours.
How desperate are you for gas?
Very desperate.
How long have you been waiting in line for gas?
Almost 2 hours.
But oil companies are beginning to recover. ExxonMobil resumed operations on one of its Gulf platforms, and Colonial Pipelines restored flows to 2 pipelines by Monday night. And now let's turn to the Lone Star State. Texas now has one of the strictest abortion bans in the country. The controversial law took effect Wednesday after the U.S. Supreme Court declined to block it. It prevents women from getting abortions after 6 weeks of gestation. The law also allows citizens to sue anyone who helps a woman obtain an abortion. But there are exceptions for medical emergencies. The law will allow private citizens to sue abortion providers. It won't be something that is enforced by the state, but a person who impregnated a woman through rape or incest cannot sue. Over 20 abortion providers sued state officials and district judges in July to prevent the law, alleging it was unconstitutional. But the law went into effect September 1st after the Supreme Court chose not to stop it. Rights groups are seeing the law as a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade, the landmark decision legalizing abortion. It is unclear if the law will stay on the books or further legal action will stop it. The Supreme Court is poised to rule on a 15-week abortion ban in Mississippi. And an election reform bill is headed to Governor Greg Abbott's desk to be signed into law. It's one of the bills that had Democrat state reps fleeing to D.C. earlier this year. But Republicans got the bill to the governor's desk once enough Democrats were back in Texas. Abbott says the bill will protect election integrity. Some of the bill's measures include uniform voting hours across the state and new ID requirements for mail-in ballots. Voters can also correct the defective mail-in ballots, but distributing unsolicited mail-in ballot applications will not be allowed. And there will be no drive-through voting and no 24-hour voting locations. Republican Texas Senator Bryan Hughes authorized the bill. He says voter fraud is real in Texas and the vote needs to be protected. Democrat Texas Congressman Trey Martinez says he thinks the bill is trying to stop certain people from voting. He says they will fight it in court. Abbott is expected to sign the bill into law. And now, before we end, let's take a moment to look at space. More than 4,800 pounds of cargo are headed to space. Some items are to be expected, such as fresh food that includes avocados and lemons, but some items are raising some eyebrows. The Dragon capsule is also carrying experiments into space. Among them, the Girl Scouts are sending ants, brine, shrimp, and plants as test subjects. Scientists at the University of Wisconsin-Madison are flying up seeds from a plant used in genetic research. A Japanese startup company is sending up a robotic arm that they hope will perform duties usually done by astronauts. They hope to expand the usage of robotics in space. But that's not all. The Dragon capsule is also carrying some tasty treats for the astronauts. Ice cream was also one of the items being sent into space. It seems even in a spacesuit, the 7 astronauts also enjoy ice cream. NASA launched the resupply delivery Sunday on a SpaceX cargo Dragon capsule from Kennedy Space Center. It docked ahead of schedule. The mission also featured a new drone ship. SpaceX's Falcon 9 booster landed on the ship in the Atlantic Ocean a few minutes after launch. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.